I've been around ministry my entire life. And in my lifetime, I've seen countless people say that they were called to preach, they were called to be an evangelist, they were called to be this, but rarely do you hear anyone say that they were called to serve. And when you look at the example of Jesus, who is the Son of God and is the most important person who has ever walked the face of this earth. He was a servant first. So if we're going to be like Jesus, then we should have the heart of a servant and understand that the very basis of our Christianity is the way that we love others, the way that we help others, the way that we serve others. And once we grasp that, then that's when we become qualified for those higher titles, such as minister or pastor or whatever your calling may be. And this is something that Jesus taught over and over and over again. And not only did he teach it, but he lived it. He lived the life of a servant, even down to the way that he came. He didn't come in a palace. He wasn't exclusive. He walked in the sand with sandals on, and he walked among the people, and he touched and he healed and he delivered people. And he showed love and concern. And then he died that horrible death. Everything that he did was his service to us. And so if we're going to serve the Lord, then we need to know that if we're serving God, we are servants of God and of mankind. This week's lesson is called to serve, and we can find the text in the book of St. Luke in the 14th chapter. And this is one of Jesus' parables. And one thing that I love about the parables is that the lesson and the message is so simple. And just the concept of parables is really good for me as someone who delivers the word of God, whether I'm speaking or whether I'm teaching, because the simplicity that Jesus used, it says that he had the heart of a servant and that his delivery was not so much geared toward people exalting him and saying he was such a great spirit, such a great speaker, as much as it was him making sure that the people listening were able to grasp the concept that he was teaching. And as someone who teaches, that is my first priority. The Bible is a great big book with a whole bunch of great big words. And yes, I could stand here and I could be extremely proper and eloquent and use all of these big words. But my goal for this in this setting is that you understand, because God told me to teach and to serve and to meet the needs of the people who are watching and who are listening. And that's what I get out of this lesson and what Jesus did and how he took the time to share these parables. He broke them down, and these parables are stories that he used to illustrate heavenly concepts which were foreign to the world. But he used examples of everyday life that they knew and that they understood. So here in this example, he's talking about when you go and when you become a guest and where you sit. And he said, don't ask to sit in the highest, most prestigious seat. And I love this right. He said, there might be somebody who is more honorable than you. You save that seat for them and you go and sit someplace else and be content there. And then you wait. You don't go to the higher seat unless someone comes and bids you and tell you to come sit there. And it's such a simple concept, but it's such an important concept because we don't want to be of the mindset that, I walk in, I'm the end all be all, I'm all that. I'm taking the highest seat because I'm the greatest thing here. You don't want to have that attitude. And I've learned that because I do have a background in journalism and I go to a lot of events where they have the VIP section. And sometimes I won't even go in the VIP section. I'll go sit with the normal people because sometimes in VIP you have people they did different things to get there. They may not have actually earned their seat in VIP, and the attitudes are so condescending and nasty until you don't want to be around that. And see, like Jesus is saying, it's better to take a lower seat and be asked to come up higher than it is to place yourself in a high seat and be asked to step down. And that's where we want to be as Christians, because one thing that I have learned in my lifetime, and even though and what the word says has bared out for me, your gift will make room for you and it will place you among great men. It's never necessary to brag. My mom used to always say to me, when a person brags, they are trying to convince themselves of something that they know is not true. And that really stuck with me. So, as a person who is a servant of God, you do what you know is right. And you do what you need to do to help other people. And you make sure that, especially in church, that what you're saying and what you're doing is edifying people. And when you do that, people will speak up for you. And our text also says that if you exalt yourself, you're going to be abased. Okay, but if you have humility, you'll be exalted. And that's what you want. You don't have to exalt yourself. You allow God to exalt you, because Jesus, again, he's really an exalted servant. He came to serve, and that's where we want to be. We want to put others first, and consider the needs of others, and consider how we fit in the plan of God for bringing others to salvation. And then Jesus used a second example in this parable, which talks about a dinner. And he was saying, when you have this dinner, don't just invite your friends and your family and people who you know can repay you. And I invite you to dinner this week, and then next week is your treat. He said, that's not really doing nothing. That's not. I'm not impressed by that. What impresses me is you paying for dinner or inviting somebody to dinner. The blind, the lame, people who can't pay you, they can't do anything back for you. That's what impresses me. And I just love this whole way that Jesus teaches humility, because it's just the opposite of what we do today, right? We're impressed by these exclusive guest lists, and I'm going to be here, and this celebrity is going to be there, and this rich person is going to be there. So I think I'm doing something right because I'm going to that dinner. But Jesus said, I ain't impressed, but that ain't nothing. Big deal. Show me how you help somebody who couldn't help you. And I remember as a little girl when I was growing up in church, we would, my house was the house that hosted Thanksgiving. We would cook and we would have everybody over. I would do all the cooking. And when we had the church, my dad would leave and he would go to the church on Thanksgiving, every Thanksgiving morning, and get there like 5 o'clock in the morning and stay until about 1 p.m. And they fed the homeless. And some people, some of the family members were complaining, it's Thanksgiving. Why he gotta go over there? He should be here with family. He gets a day off. But to me, what made him a really great pastor was the fact that he was there. Yeah, I would love to have my dad there with me all day on Thanksgiving, but I was so proud of him. I was so proud to be able to say that dad is not here right now. He'll be a little late because he's feeding the homeless, because that is what makes you great. And so when we look at these teachings of Jesus where it says called to be a servant, called to serve. It's a charge, it's a calling, it's an obligation, it's a requirement to serve. And if we're not willing to serve, we're not fit to lead, we're not fit to teach, we're not fit to preach. If we're not serving and giving and sharing, then what we say is powerless. That's where your power comes from. That's where your strength comes from. And Jesus knew that, and he taught that. And not only did he teach it, but he was that perfect example. Jesus didn't need to come to earth. He didn't come down here for himself. He came down here for us. And if Jesus could do that, then it's not going to hurt us to consider other people, to exalt other people, to give other people a chance to understand and experience the love of God through our service. That is what it's all about. So we want to pay attention to this lesson that Jesus delivered in this parable and understand it doesn't matter what your title is or what your calling is. You were called to serve.